Hi, welcome back to the Delmont Garden Library. My name is Erica. I am the teen librarian here at Delmont. And this week we're going to do a build your own board game grab and go. Just a note from me to you, building your own board game is a project that takes time and patience, but it's not something that is impossible to do. It seems difficult, but I promise it's not. And together in this video, we're going to go over the different types of games that you can make and a game that I'm going to make sort of with you. I've already pre-planned it, but I'm going to go through my process and give you an idea of how to do it. This grab and go has just it's not rules really, it's just guidelines, it's jumping points, it's ways to help you create the thing you want to do, and not set you up in a place where you have to make something identical to myself or anyone else. I want to remind you that this is something for fun. You don't have to make it perfect. It doesn't have to be like, prepackaged in a box. It can literally be made on paper, and it's for you to have fun with. I know that quarantine has been long for all of us, and I am hoping that with this, you can do something a little different. You can play with your friends online or in person, and you can kind of entertain yourself and your family if you want. So with no further ado, please remember that our grab and goes are first come, first serve, but this one in a very unique and fun way requires literally only the things you have at home and a couple things, of cardboard if you so wish. So you can really do this with everything you have in your house. All right, let's get started. So the first thing you're going to do is ask yourself, what kind of game do I want to make? There are 4 types of board games that we're going to go over here, but we're only going to make one type in this video. I will show you an example of another that I made a little while ago when I was really doing the initial pre-planning for this program, and then the one that we're going to go over today together because I thought it would be fun to come up with something new for this video. So, what kind of games are there? Point games. Those are games where the player with the most or fewest points wins. Race. The first player to reach the end wins. Co-op or cooperation. You work together to win. Or card games. A number of cards or matches to win. Examples of these games are, in points, you've got Risk and Monopoly. Risk, it's to get the most amount of countries and rule the world. Monopoly is to have all the property and have all the money. A race game is like Sorry or Candyland, where you have to just get to the end. Cooperative games are Pandemic, which is aptly named for today, and Clue. Pandemic, you're working together with a bunch of scientists to stop a pandemic, and Clue, you're trying to find out who killed Mr. Body. And card games like Uno or Go Fish. We're going to cover this here more today than this. I don't feel that card games are in my wheelhouse of things that I know how to make. That does not mean that you don't know how to make them. It means that I just don't feel confident enough to do it. So I have faith in you. If you want to make a card game, you can, but that's not something we're covering today. I'm sorry. The question you're going to ask yourself is, what is my game going to be? You need to decide what you want to do, what kind of game you want to play, and what the rules of that game are going to be. I decided that I was going to make a monster game. When I was a teenager, I was in love with vampires and werewolves, and I was all into that stuff. So I thought, you know what? Let's harken back to my days of old and make a game about monsters. So I covered the type of monsters I wanted to do. Some of them do not show up in the final version, like the Sanderson sisters. They're from Hocus Pocus. Edward Cullen, I just don't really like him. But you'll see that like the Wolfman is here, the Mummy is here, Medusa's here. It's like a whole monster mash. It's pretty cool. And I figured out questions I wanted to ask about the monsters. So the question then becomes, what kind of game did I decide to make? And I'm about to show you. I decided to make a game where you have to figure out what monsters are in the room with you, and the first person to be left standing or left unveiled as a monster is the winner. So I made some rules and I typed them out. The rules are, you use a dice to move around the board. You follow the prompts on the spaces landed. You can only guess the identity of another player once. If a player guesses wrong, the player is out of the game. If a player guesses right, the identified player has lost the game, and the winner is the last person left unidentified. Which led me to the board. What kind of board am I going to use, and how is it going to work for the game? So here's a little rundown on the type of boards there are. They're boards for race games. This resembles Candyland, and this resembles a game that I created for me and my friends. The green, or the area with a star, for those of you who are colorblind, is the starting point, and the red, or the last piece here, is the finish. The object of the game is very simply to go from point A to point B. You want to get there first, and you want to get there fast. The other kind of games are point games and co-op games, and you might recognize these boards. Again, the green or star is your starting space, and then you go around the board on this one and around these places here, and that's because this game is based off Monopoly, where you go around a board and gather property, and this one is based on Clue, where you make spaces to get into places to find out clues and information about the person who killed Mr. Body. So these are just examples of boards. You don't need to make your board look like this. It's just to show you what you can do. So keeping that in mind, I made my board. I decided that I wanted it to be in a swamp, and I made the swamp circular because for some reason in my mind that made sense, and I knew I wanted to decorate it. I wanted to put a vampire, I wanted to do Medusa, a zombie, a werewolf. I know I'm not that talented though in drawing, so I thought maybe I could make a moon, and I just had the idea that you would be going around and around and around in the board where there's no actual stopping point because it's a circle and circles don't have stops, essentially. That this would give people an unlimited amount of time to move and a lot of options and chances to figure out who the other monsters are. The next thing I needed to figure out was how many players the game was going to have and what kind of monsters and how many monsters I wanted to use. I figured the game is good for about 4 players, and I created more than 4 monsters to give everyone a fair shake at being somebody different. As you can see on these boards, I have included the names of the monsters and a little biography about them. I did this because I know not everyone knows everything about the monster they might get. For example, one of the monsters I've chosen was Grendel, who is from an Old English poem. And another monster that I used was Frankenstein's monster, who many people think is actually named Frankenstein. So I included little bits of trivia and information about these characters so that if you're unfamiliar with them, you can answer the trivia you're given well, and if you are familiar with them, it might include something a little fun you didn't know before. I also created the questions, and I color-coded the questions with the plan to have the board color-coded. So you can see I ask questions like, what can you turn into? Do you use something to fly? Do you use a cauldron? Did you die? What's your favorite food? Etc., to give you a bunch of things to ask and a bunch of things to answer. And that helps the game move along, and it also can be used for multiple characters. So these little color-coded questions can get used over and over and over again, and they will have a different answer for each monster. My board has the color codes that I had decided upon, the red and the blue, and you can see that I decorated it. I didn't color it because I didn't want to spend too much time coloring it. But I did want to create a little bit of a sense of the monsters that you're going to see. So with that in mind, I realized that the next thing I needed to do was make pieces for my board. So this is how you make a figure with the cardboard that I sent home with you. You're going to need a piece of cardboard, and you're going to have much bigger pieces than this. A Sharpie, a pen, a crayon, some kind of utensil to draw with, and a pair of scissors. And that's it to make these figures. They're really simple. So since I'm making a monster themed game, I will make a monster themed piece. I'm gonna turn it this way just because this piece is a little funky. I'll even that out later. I'm going to make a face. I'm gonna give it one eyeball because I'm gonna make a cyclops. He's gonna have a smile. He's gonna have a peace sign because he's nice, even though they're known for eating people. He's gonna just be chilling out. There he is. That's my Cyclops. We'll give him a little hair. There we go. My Cyclops. And now to make him standable. I'm gonna trim that piece because it really is ugly. I'm going to cut the bottom part of this cardboard off. I'm going to cut a slit into my little guy here. I promise he's okay. So if any of you were like, no, the Cyclops, he's all right, I promise. And I'm gonna cut a little slit into this piece here. Not too big. I actually think I was overzealous in this piece, so you can feel bad for him. You line up these cuts like this and slide them into each other. And then the piece will actually be able to stand up on its own. How cute is that? These are the little figurines I decided to make. They are not the cutest in the world, but they're mine. They are too big for the board that I have, but that's not too big of a deal to me. They're fun. They are a little wonky, but they have little personalities that I really like. So these are the type of figures you can make with the cardboard. I'm sure there are other ways to make figures, but I have not figured them out. So feel free to use your creativity, feel free to draw your own, to print images and glue them, and to have fun with this project.